Welcome, everybody, to Kremlin File. We have a very, very special guest with us today, Yevhen Fedchenko, and he is the director of the Mohyla School of Journalism in Ukraine, and also the co-founder of StopFake.org, and former Fulbright professor at USC Annenberg. Yevhen, we spoke with the other day with Maria Avdeeva, and she finished off, her discussion with a real message, to all of us. Besides our full support for Ukraine and what is happening and how we can support you, but also to be very, very careful about all of the disinformation, the Russian disinformation that is getting out there. And it was a very, very strong message from Maria. So to be aware and all of that. So you wrote in a tweet, Yevhen, Russian disinformation inherited a lot from the Soviet active measures. You've written extensively about this, the Kremlin propaganda, Soviet active measures, by other means, explains main tools and narratives. So we're going to get into a bit of the genesis today, but I want you to begin by telling us all about StopFake.org. Evan?
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to participate. It's really, really a great pleasure, especially at this absolutely crucial moment for Ukraine. And if we talk about disinformation, this is the main way to understand how this war was constructed, how this war was prepared, and how this war is structured. I mean, in terms of division between kinetic warfare and information warfare. And StopFake was following Russian disinformation since 2014. Immediately as Crimea was occupied and then war in Donbass started, we got together at School of Journalism, different people, faculty, students, former students, and decided to start a project which would be fact-checking, verifying, and debunking disinformation. Because at that moment, absolutely intuitively, we realized that this is going to be a big part of the whole war.
Yeah.
It's not only about what is happening in the field. It's not about looking for Russian tanks crossing the border. It's more about Russian disinformation getting into your mind and Russian disinformation sowing uncertainty, sowing chaos, and creating the ground for the things which we are witnessing right now. And again, it appears that we were absolutely right predicting that the next war would be organized around disinformation. And if we look at what started in Ukraine back in February 24th, it was all about disinformation. All the pretexts for this war were created by disinformation. And again, it's nothing new. So as we are saying, it's not the date when the war started. War started back in 2014. It was happening every day. But the problem was how it was perceived by different audiences and how people realized if this is a war or the war is still to come, And disinformation was basically organizing discourse around all this in a way that there is no war, there is nothing unusual, And that was the main purpose, to use all those platforms which were organized around the Russian disinformation ecosystem to make sure that they have access to very, very different audiences in different parts of the world to deliver all those messages which would persuade people and help to create absolutely parallel reality, which does not exist anywhere besides Russian minds, Russian elites, and the Russian disinformation ecosystem. And from this point of view, StopFake was following what they've been doing for 8 years on a day-to-day basis.
Wow.
So we monitored Russian media very extensively, mostly mainstream media. And we're mapping the main narratives they were pushing. We were picking up those stories which were fakes or were manipulations. We did mapping of the main narratives. We did a great archive of those narratives, which you can find on our website in different languages: Ukrainian, Russian, English, Polish, Czech, and we used to have other languages some time ago, you know. So in a way, it was a platform which allowed people to look at this ecosystem and to understand what instruments are used to push those narratives and what the impact of this ecosystem is on different audiences. So that was what StopFake was doing, and it was a great tool to predict actually Russian behavior in a political way, in a military way, because again, as I said, all this war is about disinformation.
Yeah, yes. Actually, we need to create StopFakes all over, right? We need the same. We should be following, what you guys have been doing for, since 2014. Documenting all the
absolutely, because the disinformation is not, only to Ukraine. Ukraine was the testing ground, but it is across Europe. I mean, we see the division in America. This is all from disinformation operations.
Yeah. Exactly.
So since 2014, you've had the success of debunking over 4,000 stories, fake videos, pictures. And I remember when our U.S. intelligence, came out with the assessment that Russia was preparing false flag operations and that they were going to stage, an attack and then blame it on Ukraine. And, people in the West kind of even mocked our intelligence. They're like, what? I mean, are they going to hire crisis actors and whatnot? But what they failed to realize was that this is how Russia starts a war, by creating a pretext and creating these attacks. And honestly, they don't need to hire crisis actors because they're happy to sacrifice their own, soldiers for that. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about that? I mean, how often have you seen them set up these stages for false flag operations and, and what you've seen?
Before this war started, all the narratives were set. Russian domestic audience was fully inoculated in Russian disinformation. All alternative views were absolutely disconnected from Russian media system. And all the narratives, actually, which were used as a pretext for this war, they were already developed before, and they were repeated so many times that we knew exactly that what would be the main narrative this war would be about. It would be about Ukraine as a failed state. It would be about Ukraine as a fascist neo-Nazi state. It would be about the weapon of mass destruction. And again, it was all predicted. So this is a kind of irony of this war, because we knew about this war well before it actually started. And our point was just, you should take what Russian disinformation is saying literally. It's not like they are kind of exaggerate anything. So I was watching Russian TV shows on a daily basis, and I was tweeting almost daily at the same what you've been doing. Like, if you hear that over there, that means they're really going to do that. So if they say we're going to nuke Lithuania, I would take that very, very serious, because it's not just kind of a bluffing and some verbal exercise. That's really about explaining their vision of this world, and it happens just because they do not see any limitations for that. So they push their narratives, and then they behave according to those narratives. So nothing is hidden over there. So I was always taking it literally. So they're saying that we are going to shell Ukrainian cities. So my perception was that, yes, they are really going to shell Ukrainian cities, even if when most people were in total disbelief that they would ever see something like that.
Yeah, they would think, well, as a person sitting, let's say, in the West, right? They would say,
so
come on, they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, thank God that I have great friends who have educated me. And I kept saying, no, I think they're actually going to do it. And I would talk to people and they would say, no, come on. No, they're not going to do that. And then boom, that kind of thing. Because a lot of people, what they don't understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong, this is like a military tool. This is part and parcel of their military action. So, and this is what a lot of people don't see because they watch TV and they say, no, it's just, it's just stuff for social media, but they don't understand the real psyops, that are underneath all of the from the old Soviet active measures, the way that you talked about.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was researching that, and from my point of view, what Russia was doing last 8 years was just a continuation of the Soviet approaches to that. They've been exploiting the weaknesses of the Western system from ideological point of view, and probably now they do not have ideology, one specific ideology, but instead they have multiplicity of ideologies they can sell to all interested audiences. They can talk to far right, they can talk to far left, they can talk to imperialists, they can talk to anti-colonialists, and
globalists, anti-globalists.
They've got a menu for everybody.
Absolutely. Basically. So that was the biggest change, the departure from one big ideology. The second departure was what Lenin was saying, that we would sell them the rope in which they would sell us a rope, we would hand them money. So they were using all the benefits of Western technologies, Western journalists and editors who were happy to work for this system. They were using freedom of speech as a whole to get into the systems. They've been using the multiplicity of views. They've been using the weaknesses of each society they were penetrating. And so the system just became much more flexible compared to Soviet system. And they also weaponized social media, which was not available in Soviet times. So all those components allowed them to use the weaknesses of the West and also to use the money available to that and make it attractive and make it a part actually of the Western culture. But the bottom line is what Stephen Kotkin said, it's a military police dictatorship. Whatever you are doing, what a nice trappings you can have around all this, military police dictatorship. And everything they're doing to suppress freedom of speech inside the system, and also to make as much erosion of the system outside of the system. And that's exactly what's happening. They've been doing that very intentionally. And we've been saying again for 8 years that you should get rid of this at the earliest stages, because that's like a viral sickness. You need to suppress it at the early stages, and we've been proposing sanctions against main propaganda and disinformation institutions, because, as you rightly said, they are not media. They are not absolutely media. They are part of psychological operation, now part of the Ministry of Defense, if you wish, and they should be always treated like that. And so we've been advocating sanctions against individuals and institutions. We've been advocating getting rid of RT and Sputnik, and we've always been labeled as those people who are against freedom of speech, because there was a mantra that the audiences are smart and they can always decide what is lie and what is truth, and it appears that it's not the case. No. It's not the case. No. And now we came to the same sins, but it's too little too late. So now they are sanctioning Solovyov and Simonyan, and we see social media platforms actually limiting the impact of Russian disinformation. But that's too late. The war is already happening. And again, as I was saying at the very beginning, it's not about Ukraine. Ukraine, it's a place where now this fight is happening, but it would never be limited to Ukraine.
Nope.
No, in fact, when was it? The other night, I saw a tweet by Steven Rosenberg. He was watching, he was watching Kiselev's show. And basically some of the things that were coming out, that they were talking about on that show was that that Russian troops are in Ukraine to stop Ukraine from joining NATO, getting a nuclear bomb, attacking Crimea, and then southern Russia. Basically, Ukraine was a threat, to Russia, which is a complete alternative reality. This is what they were pushing.
That's
right,
what they've been painting for.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been documenting it. That is what they've been painting for, a long time. And the only thing I would add to this is they project. So they accuse Ukrainian military of, there will be an attack in this city, and that is Russian forces. In Syria, they projected that U.S. and white helmets were preparing a chemical attack in Idlib. Meanwhile, a chemical attack did happen, but it was by Assad and Russian forces. So that's the only thing I would add, that they project and they tell you what they're going to do. They just blame the other side of what is happening. Just even with elections, they've attacked every single Western election. But when it comes to them domestically, U.S. is attacking our election, as if someone can penetrate their election. I mean, that's laughable.
It's ridiculous. Yeah,
there is no election
claim.
There.
No,
but this is what they do. And I mean, I'm sure you have been monitoring very closely. How worried are you with this narrative that, Ukrainian military is preparing to set off a dirty bomb, that they're preparing to use chemical weapons inside? We know Ukrainian military didn't wait for 200,000 Russian soldiers and Chechens and Syrians to cross into Ukraine in order to decide to use dirty bombs and chemical weapons. That's a lie. How concerned are you with all of this, and where the direction of the war is going?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. All those narratives, again, are known to us already for years, and they've been pushing them on and on, and basically nothing new we see now. So they are just using the same playbook. And again, it happens at very different levels. Probably the biggest change now is that they have very limited possibilities for Russian official propaganda to be disseminated again, because when the war started, the level of trust decreased significantly. And even those people who've been carrying water for Russian government are now quite, silent and uncertain and try to keep away, because it's toxic. Nobody wants to, or almost no one wants to be.
Almost. I can give you some people here that are still.
Yeah, but it's not a mainstream anyway already, because the people, if they are rational, they won't be seen on the wrong side of the history, But previously, it was absolutely normal to carry water for them, to reinforce all those narratives, to sit rationally and discuss that. Is Ukraine really, going to produce a dirty bomb? And now let's Ukraine prove that they are not going to do that, or Ukrainians are fascists. Or let's ask Ukrainians how they can prove they're not fascists, how StopFake we are not fascists,
that's the subtle one there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and it's kind of absurdity, because for years people were normalizing those narratives.
And now for a break. In the past year, your paycheck's average buying power became worth almost 8% less. That's the real impact of inflation on your earnings. But we're believers in taking the power back into your hands when it comes to your financial future. That's why we did some research and we came across a fintech startup valued at $1 billion called Masterworks. Masterworks lets you invest in blue chip art, an asset class which saw price appreciation of 23% on average when inflation is above 3%, like it is right now. Their team of art experts analyze over 60,000 data points to find trending artists with high potential for growth. Then, members can purchase shares representing an investment in those artworks on their platform. So go to masterworks.art/Kremlin file to join over 350,000 other members. Again, that's masterworks.art/Kremlin file. And also see important Regulation A disclosures at masterworks.io/CD.
Speaking of journalism, how important is it? Because this honestly has been probably one of my biggest frustrations over the past decade. You have Western journalists who come to cover, now they were covering it in 2014. Can you explain how important language is? Because people need to understand, Russia intentionally tries to, pollute the information space by putting out so many different narratives that people just don't understand what to believe. And then you have journalists, who have described Russia's illegal annexation of Crimea. I mean, they rolled in, their operatives, annexed a part of Ukraine, then moved into Donbass, annexed that, and people are calling it a civil war. And there are Russian separatists there. I don't know what a Russian separatist is, but apparently Western media does. How important is it that when you're dealing with things like this, that the proper language is used? And how do journalists find this proper language?
Yeah, Olga, absolutely. This is a great question because sadly, we still have journalists who continue to report Ukraine through this lens of this two-sidism, as I said. Yeah, so they say, on one hand, yes, but on another hand, and then they can find some kind of a contradiction which would help them to kind of develop their story, because it's much more easier to do a story when you have some contradiction. And they are still asking, but what about, Russian speakers? What about, this East-West divide of Ukraine? What about language divisions, religious divisions? Of course, and they say, it's complicated. Every country is complicated. Show me at least one country which is not complicated or which didn't have a complicated history, because every second piece of journalism started, Ukraine has very complicated history. Of course, because it was a history of genocides, it was a history of killing of Ukrainians for being Ukrainians. And yes, I would call it very complicated, But sometimes I really see how those reports just add to a Russian narrative without even being connected to. And there are many different explanations for that. First of all, because there is some absolutely this still existing very Russia-centered kind of sentiment of covering Ukraine, because some journalists, living in Russia, covering Ukraine from Russia, has some, family connections to Russia, and they have this emotional kind of this Russian culture, Tchaikovsky, Dostoevsky, and other things, as if it really kind of important in this very moment, and other things.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was created this kind of a fog of uncertainty, which was very, very helpful for Russian disinformation. Because if you repeat some narratives Russia is pushing, they are really happy, they are grateful, and Madame Zakharova will always like to use it in her daily postings on Facebook, and other things. So instead of questioning those things, I've seen a lot of journalists were kind of disseminating skepticism, were saying like, no, we need to leave it because it's very, authentic Russian kind of media culture and other things, And now finally we see that there is no any leftovers of this media culture. It was all this kind of it was all ruined by the government, and nothing is over there. And inside Russia, everything which is consumed now by Russians is propaganda.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I have to say, from the States, the coverage by CNN has been remarkable. I mean, they are calling it an assault on Ukraine. They are trying to get every single Ukrainian on the ground, despite technical difficulties, because Zoom constantly freezes. They're really, really they're on the ground. Yeah. They're reporting. They're disgusted. You feel, they're like pain from the reporters on the ground. So I have to say, I'm very shocked. I was expecting, with our elections, and I was petrified that when this war was going to start, that we were going to see this, two sides. And luckily here in the States, knock on wood, as far as the main CNN, MSNBC, we haven't seen it. Fox News is in a different, category. Yeah. But
Yevhen, you're working right now, correct? You're still fully operational there.
Yeah, we're full operational because we know that the stakes are very, very high, because it's about basically existential threat of Ukraine if we lose this war. And that stimulates us to work as much as possible to explain all those things, to explain how they impact people in very different parts of the world, and to make sure that Ukraine is on radar, because if we would get Ukraine off the radar, that would mean that this war would go on for years and years. And you mentioned those polls conducted in European countries, and that's absolutely great, because people are really interested and caring about what is happening. The figures are huge, and you just should understand how big it's for us here. If we see. Probably some people are saying, well, if we see some building in yellow and blue, this is not enough compared to if you would provide weapon. For me, it equals to weapon supply, because if you know that we are fighting not alone, that means that you would be doing that much, much better, and you would feel support of your actions, and that works absolutely for me, for my colleagues, and we understand that this is not only our war. And when we are saying that it's not only about Ukraine, that doesn't mean that we just want to drag everybody else to this war and make everybody fighting instead of us. We are saying the opposite, that yes, this war is absolutely dangerous because it can spill over to other places. But we are fighting here, and everything we ask is just to support us, not to abandon us, not to do any things which would be harmful for us behind our backs, And that's it. So for us, it's great to see this support. And of course, that's important that media would keep Ukraine on radar as well. Because as a person who teaches how to cover conflicts, I'm always saying to my students that with every war, the first weeks are the most crucial, with most attention from media and most attention from audiences. And what is happening next is compassion fatigue, basically. And people just become tired of bad news and keeping those bad news in their focus, and they're just switching to something else. So it's very, very important to kind of overcome this compassion fatigue, and to try to keep people's attention and to keep volumes on reporting on Ukraine, And I see absolutely amazing work of civil society organizations here in Ukraine who are doing an absolutely amazing job. It's not only about fact-checking, it's about many other media-related things like all types of explanatory works. infographics and translating scenes into very, very different languages, working with the journalists locally. So because people understand this is a media war as well. We started with that this war was pretexted by manipulation of media, and this war is conducted through some creation of some kind of media perception of this war. So if we would not be doing enough, if there would be not a big volume of information about this conflict, definitely that at some point people would just switch to something else. And again, we also see how Russia wants to kind of make this more dissolved, and to kind of throw into conversation as many nonsenses as possible to make sure that it's all contradictory to each other, and people will not understand why we are fighting for. So from our point of view, it's important to make it as transparent as possible. And it goes all the way from non-government organizations to President of Ukraine, who is also doing a lot of media and communication personally. And that's as important as those things which are reported by media. So it's all actually about getting a message across and making sure that it's more amplified than Russian disinformation, which competes with those signals.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot, of contradicting. That's what I'm finding, is that you have one view and then it cancels, with another one. Speaking of Zelensky, so you're very positive about how he's been conducting, his
I am, because
his communication.
Because it's all kind of create the absolutely transparent picture of what is happening, who is doing what. And again, it's not only some people who are retelling what is happening, but when president is going and first person saying, that we are doing that and that we are fighting for that, we are asking you for this and that help. That's a very different level of communicating your actions, and that's the opposite what might happen during the times of war, because usually the war is associated with some limitations of information, some censorship related to war and other things. So Ukraine is doing just the opposite. We are not censoring anything. We are absolutely open at all levels. All ministers are doing great media job, from Minister Kuleba, from Minister of Foreign Affairs to Ministry of Defense, to the local level of emergency services, and that's absolutely amazing, because all people understand the importance of having this information. We cannot leave the void of information. We cannot leave any vacuum, because as back in 2014, it would be immediately filled with disinformation. That's the biggest difference with 2014.
Okay. Speaking of vacuum, Russia has taken control of a few towns, or has surrounded a few towns, and basically these towns are under siege. In Mariupol, there's a humanitarian crisis. I mean, I every day check, and I mean, we don't even know we can't get a clear picture of what's happening inside, but people have no electricity, no food, no medicine, no heat. In brutal cold weather. How are you able to get information out of these cities that are right now more under Russian control, or their surrounding? Are you still able to get that information out so you could document the war crimes and anything else that is happening there?
Yeah, unlike places like Kiev, where you have a lot of journalists concentrated, there are places, as you mentioned, where you cannot get through, or it's too dangerous to be there. So most information is coming either from local authorities or local activists from different civil society organizations who are still on the ground. It's absolutely dangerous for them. And they those people who became a kind of media personalities, they're even in a bigger danger, because when Russian occupiers are getting into some locations, they immediately look for those people. Some of them were already abducted, and we don't know what happened to them. But again, risking their lives, they go to media, they share their stories. Some of them are even live streaming anti-Russian demonstrations in those cities which are already occupied. And some of them are abducted during streaming already, And as you remember, there are those lists of activists throughout Ukraine, which were compiled by Russia, for whom they will be looking in the first instance definitely to kill them. So it's a very, very difficult situation with that. But again, as I said, people are still risking their life to get information through and say, yes, we are in difficulties, that and that is happening, but we are fighting. That's very important to keep this information coming.
Yeah. No, they're heroes.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's incredible how many people that we're talking to, and it's a true, I say this all the time, and I really, really mean it. I go onto the feeds, and for me, it's an inspiration, because if you sit and you just watch the destruction, but you have to concentrate on what people are really doing and, helping, as you were saying, documenting, but all the humanitarian aid that's coming through and people working right there, and
getting information out.
And getting information out.
Because if we are to have any kind of accountability, you have to have evidence of, all the crimes that Russian military is committing. Yeah,
absolutely. So I know that many people are documenting, and many organizations are documenting all those crimes already, because it's important to have all those facts. And have the archive of all that, and Ukraine is going to prosecute all those people who are in charge and who were executing all those criminal orders, And I know that people are getting all of those the witnesses accounts and other photo, video. They're getting all that together, and as I said, sometimes it's very, very risky, but they are still doing that. And yes, Monique, you are absolutely right. It's a kind of a country of daily heroes, and everybody is a hero. And many people are saying that you never knew that you are living alongside with heroes.
Yeah.
It is.
We're lucky. We're lucky. Okay, to be. No, we are. We are definitely.
After all of this is said and done, and Ukraine prevails, then maybe they can ask NATO to join them. Because
I know. That's what I kept saying.
Yeah, they have shown the world again how things are done, how to fight disinformation, how to fight every single, hybrid warfare tactic that Russia conducts. So, I mean, it is truly inspiring.
It is.
To wrap up, any last thoughts you want to tell the world, and what you want us to do more that we could do?
Yeah. Anything.
Yeah. So the bottom line is we would continue our fight anyway. And probably you've seen all those memes with Ukrainian tractors and farmers who are stealing Russian military hardware. So there is a punchline to that. If Ukrainian farmers could do that, you also can do that as well, So that's my message, that if Ukrainian farmers can do that, everybody can do that. Don't be afraid. Call out the perpetrators and help us to fight, and we will win.
Yevhen, where can everyone find your work? Can you tell us?
Yeah, so the stop number one is our website, stopfake.org, which, as I said, available in English, Russian, Ukrainian, Polish, Czech. But also, please do follow us on Twitter. It's Stop Faking News. So it's like appeal to people, like stop faking news, That's easy to remember, And also we're available on Facebook and many other places. So we are like everywhere. And we really ask you to follow us and not let any chance for disinformation to get over our information space.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And we'll put the links on the podcast episode on our website
Everywhere.
and on the tweets so everybody knows. Yeah, no, this I'm telling you, StopFake is like one of my favorite places forever because it's just such an easy compilation, to fact check something. It's amazing. The work is amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Hey, everybody, if you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to subscribe and please visit our website, kremlinfile.com. This is a Bunker Crew Media production hosted by Olga Lautman and me, Monique Camarra, with executive producers Marley Clements, Jack Bryan, Grant DeSimone, Ben Brett, and Jordy Mycelis of Midas Media, with associate producers Ruby Frankel and Sarah Metz. Theme music by Oreste Camarra. Sound editing and mixing by Joy Ellett. Subscribe to Kremlin File wherever